Su Qing's novella Beauty on the Crossroad, preface by Wang Anyi. Looking for Su Qing, I came up with this topic because I read an article, Remembering Su Qing by Mr. Jin Xingyao. There is a section in the article about the last meeting between Mr. Jin Xingyao and Su Qing in the 1950s. She was wearing a women's folk costume. This outfit is really surprising. It always reminds me of Shanghai in the 1950s. Even if there is only one cheongsam suit left, it should be Su Qing. Because why? Because she is Zhang Ailing's friend. Su Qing reappears at the moment when we reminisce about the city. She is the old person in nostalgia. She was a little late than Zhang Ailing, and she seemed to have been brought out by Zhang Ailing. It would have been bad if she didn't come, but it was amazing when she came. She was so alive, and it was almost impossible to be buried for so many years. She is not like Zhang Ailing. Zhang Ailing is estranged from us and seems to be able to understand. She is prepared for literary history, and her return is responsible for literature. Even in literature, what we can easily accept about her is only superficial, some details of life, and furthermore, there may be some atmosphere of the environment. The daily life in the alley house is a mixture of powder and grease. The street view from the balcony of the apartment is noisy and a bit lonely, and the private conversations between women are heart to heart and separated from the belly. These are all déjà vu and returns. However, Eileen Chang is far away, and you cannot see her face clearly. Even if you see her face clearly, she is not the one you want to see. Eileen Chang, her novels, and even her prose are all separated by distance, hiding themselves. Very strict. We can't hear Zhang Ailing's voice, only the voices of a series of characters, such as Qiqiao, Lia Su, Anna Shao. Only once, in Love in a Fallen City, Zhang Ailing accidentally revealed some clues. It was during the days when Lia Su and Fan Liyuan were in Hong Kong that the two of them had all sorts of intrigues. During the Cold War, one night, while on the phone across the room at the Repulse Bay Hotel, Fan Liyuan suddenly recited the poem Death and Life from the Book of Songs. The love is broad. I am happy with my son. I hold my son's hand, and I grow old with him. I always feel that it is not Fan Liyuan who reads the poem, but Zhang Ailing. Zhang Ailing's romantic story is said to be performed on the stage in Shanghai, but this is just a statement. In fact, it is in the broad relationship between life and death. Shanghai at that time did have a certain characteristic of a broad relationship between life and death. The past was like a dream, the present is also like a dream, and the future is even more like a dream. But this is what onlookers see, and those in the game see either the glint of swords, life and death, or roses blooming everywhere. Once Zhang Ailing's voice is heard, it will be in vain. She cannot satisfy our Shanghai's heart. Therefore, Zhang Ailing looked at it with her face hidden, which was better, as she would not fall into nothingness. After all, the scenery at the front desk had the word Shanghai written on it. Su Qing suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. She is a real person, as if we can see her. Even in her novels, this fictional genre, we can see her active figure. She gives us the impression of being agile, having a sharp tongue, seeing people and things very clearly, and daring to speak, do and act. When we read her articles, it is like listening to her speech, and we can almost argue with her. She was a person walking on the streets in Shanghai in the 1930s and 1940s. She went to cut clothes, buy leather shoes, have her teeth checked, and went to beauty salons. She was busy and lively, but Zhang Ailing was sitting in front of the window watching. We can experience the coolness and heat of Shanghai 50 years ago in Su Qing, but Zhang Ailing cannot touch it. However, after all, we can only look for Su Qing from the pile of old papers. It is said that only 50 years have passed. Just because these 50 years have been full of ups and downs, there have been amazing changes. So the pile of paper has accumulated into a mountain. Many things are impossible to imagine. Even if you see a familiar street corner from old photos, even the sycamore tree is the same one today. You still can't imagine the people and things at that time. No matter how active Su Qing is in front of you, he is still a character in a faded black and white film. Her Shanghai's is accented and has a local flavor. You can understand the story told in Shanghai's like that, but you have to think about it in a different way. Therefore, I was really surprised to learn that Su Qing was with us until the early 1980s. I always felt that she should stay away from us. Zhang Ailing is not far away. She has avoided the area of wearing people's clothing and has become a complete old person, alive and dead. Why doesn't Su Qing leave? Time has drawn a dividing line on her, isolating our sight. Su Qing's writing could be said to be a drop in the ocean in those years when the newspaper industry was booming. In the corner of the long text, a small forum was opened, talking about dressing, eating, serving husbands and raising children, which has the meaning of a women's paradise. She was quick-tongued, not talking about romance, but only about the benefits of living and the inner workings of being a human being. Those are some things that are unavoidable in all dynasties, all generations, and even time can't do anything about it. No matter how time flies, life will always go on and it will always be the same. Of course, it is not the kind of tracing back to the origin of making fire, but the good days after the progress of civilization, when science is added with a little bit of humanity. Shanghai's working-class people work hard, and this livelihood is best seen at the dinner table. Cut the lettuce into small hot pieces. The leaves cannot be thrown away. Wash them and chop them finely. Rub them with salt, and then decant the bitter juice and season them. Sesame oil is another cold dish. The rib meat in the pickled vegetables has been oiled. The refining oil is enough to fry a piece of old tofu, brown both sides, and add a few drops of chili oil. The head and tail of the herring are stewed into a pot of vermicelli soup, and the belly in the middle is reserved for tomorrow night's main course. Su Qing is discussing this with you. This kind of livelihood cannot be said to be exquisite, because it is not that elegant, but a bit vulgar, and it is based on careful calculation. You have to bargain with the fishmonger for a copper plate. It has some restrained fun and is not squandered at all. It accumulates all the fun in every corner and enjoys it slowly. The changes in the outside world are abstract to it. It only recognizes those things that are close to the skin and can be felt. You can say that it is having fun, but it has a tenacious vitality, a tenacity, and would rather not die. This is not the livelihood of nurturing heroes, but nurturing all living beings. It is the base on which heroes stand. There is nothing poetic about this kind of livelihood, nothing to cry about. If you want to describe it, you can't write a big chapter. It can only occupy a small space at the beginning and end of the newspaper supplement. Even the words are like scraps. Just some scraps. Final section. Su Qing has a Shanghai heart, which can withstand ups and downs and cope with worldly affairs. In fact, if you think about it again, the first women in this city to wear women's folk costumes all came from the history of Cheongsam costumes, and Su Qing was one of them. The only reason why it is unacceptable is that Su Qing left us the words that made her appear before our eyes, while the rest of the people were quietly buried in the background of history. So we define Su Qing's image as an old-time costume. Besides, she didn't give us new words so that we could speculate on new images. Speaking of which, the experiences and changes of how many people have been lost in this city cannot be included in the history books and can only be discussed in the streets. But without it, some things are difficult to explain and have the color of legend. This is also people often say that the history of Shanghai is legendary. In fact, every day is just fuel, rice, oil and salt, and we live it diligently without any extraneous thoughts. Suddenly, when we look back, it becomes a legend. The legends of Shanghai are all like this. In the legend, what people use for daily life is also ordinary, and these daily needs must be especially strengthened before they can have the mental and physical strength to perform unexpected events. The history of other places is gradual, but the history of Shanghai City seems to come in a triple jump. Therefore, we must firmly grasp the most practical aspects of being a human being, so as not to be in a trance like a dream. What makes Su Qing smarter than others is that she has a clear mind and doesn't dream. In Su Qing's articles, the life principles for seeing through scams are always impressive, especially when it comes to men and women. The veil of tenderness is really torn apart, and it is getting harder and harder, leaving people unable to defend themselves. It is true that Su Qing is short-sighted. She is sincere and loyal to the knowledge of a frog in a well. Those sharp edges can only anger people, but cannot hurt people. She can't say that she has any great hatred or gratitude, great sorrow, or joy towards the world. It's just some resentment and interest, which is particularly suitable for Shanghai. It is most effective for dealing with people and things in front of us. It doesn't take up much spiritual space and is a form of daily life. Don't underestimate it. It just focuses on small things, but it can achieve great things. Which of the high-rise buildings and roads in Shanghai is transformed from spirit to material? They are all built brick by brick. Once you enter the city, it's like entering a track. You can't rise to the sky if you want to, and you can't sink to the bottom if you want to sink. You can only follow it. There is no such thing as ideals and sinking. Those who have these two things will leave sooner or later. Zhang Ailing is gone, and Xiaohong is gone. Xiaohong's sorrow and joy seem too heavy, and they are not useful here. They are used for the big garden of Hulan River. Men are better. They can open up a spiritual world in the national crisis and political turmoil, and build their great hatred and love. In those years, women who are in a life and death struggle live in the core of the world, relying on emotional tentacles. You can say it is selfish. Anyway, they value personal experience more than rational thinking. Shanghai is a place that can provide personal experience. It is not the nature of the essence of life, but some right and wrong, which is definitely not what the romantic Xiaohong wants, but it is exactly what Su Qing wants. If you can see Su Qing clearly, you can probably know the female citizens of Shanghai. People only see the modernity of Shanghai female citizens, because this modernity is European and American style, especially Paris. So they think that Shanghai female citizens are noble and elegant. But they don't know their boldness. Zhang Ailing wrote about this boldness in her novels, but novels are novels, and there is always a layer of separation. If you read Su Qing's articles, this boldness is credible. That eloquence can gain the upper hand over men. What kind of things does she not understand? Can you hide it from her? She is fierce, mean, but not annoying. This is the sophistication in her bones, the manifestation of understanding things, and the manifestation of having experienced a lot. On the surface, she lets go of her hands and feet and does everything, but in her heart she calculates the degree, and does not let small impatience disrupt big plans. It means being a careful person, knowing that there are no rules in this world on the surface, but there are big principles of steel and iron in secret. You are polite to some, but you can't get more after getting what you have. So she is not a revolutionary, and has no ambition to subvert. She puts livelihood first, is sensible and knows what to do. All Shanghai female citizens understand that, hidden in their fierceness is obedience. This obedience is not educated by reading and writing, but by women's instinct, and intelligence and caution. If you can hear Su Qing speak, you will find Ningbo flavor in Shanghai's modernity, which is the background color of Shanghai's modernity. Therefore, that modernity can't help but bring some country people's stubbornness, even narrow-mindedness. After watching this modern for a long time, you can see a spirit of not giving up, a gut that goes all the way to the end. Look at those old photos, the forest of shop signs on Nanjing Road, so dense and crowded, they seem to be competing with each other. And the sky is crowded. The crowd below is also swarming, wearing whatever is in the window. People say Shanghai is lively, and this liveliness is also called booing, with everyone working hard. Look at the color of the neon lights. It is actually a kind of rural atmosphere. Without some stubbornness, you can't squeeze into the ranks of modern. According to unofficial history, Zhang Qing came out of the studio at midnight and encountered a robber who tried to rob her purse. She grabbed it tightly and refused to let go, and was beaten black and blue, but she didn't let him get it. Her girlfriend asked why, and she replied that in Shanghai, you can't do anything without money. This is the spirit I'm talking about. Of course, Su Qing is calmer because she is smarter. It is difficult to paint a picture of her based on the writings she left behind, but she was probably the kind of person who could judge people by appearance and was quite popular. Even the lonely Zhang Ailing was her friend. In Shanghai, you can't get by without friends. Su Qing's willfulness was superficial and part of her financial ability, but she was very alert and ready to respond. Back then, she was so active, and this activity took all her energy. Fortunately, she was energetic, which was also the temper of a country girl, not lazy or spoiled. Shanghai is not a world of young ladies. It also talks about gender equality, taking back power and responsibility from women. not like Yan'an, which talked about taking care of women. Su Qing's novel The Moth has some meanings of Miss Sophia. Although it is simple and plain, it is similar to the passion and courage. Later, Dingling went to Yan'an. Dingling is more utopian than Su Qing. She magnified and sublimated the requirements of personality, but Su Qing did not. Instead, she wanted to realize the requirements of personality. She never wrote such a passionate novel of the May 4th movement style again. 10 Years of Marriage is almost a documentary novel, without any exaggeration, and is a true narration. Ideals and sacrifices are exaggerated and bluffing. But why bother? Flying into the Flame is too artistic, and Su Qing does not talk about art even in her articles. This is her good side. That is, truth. Su Qing writes articles not based on imagination, but on insights. Her insights are not personality, but temper. This temper is very straightforward, not coy, not coughing, and can laugh at herself. Straight to the point, very stylish. Personality, however, is not about style, but about stance, which Su Qing does not have. The point in Moth is probably also vulgar, but her writing skills are still good. The biggest advantage is that it is clear, and the description of people and things is lively and lively. When it comes to reasoning, it is also clear in logic, direct in reasoning, and with some sophistry. It is difficult for you to argue with her. Every literary battle ends with her article. This is a bit of Ningbo style. Isn't there a saying that goes, "I'd rather quarrel with Suzhou people than talk to Ningbo people"? In Shanghai, what is needed is fierceness. If you are a little fiercer than the crowd, you will be extraordinary. It is not difficult to find Su Qing. The groups of women walking on the street are all Su Qing. Su Qing is just a little fiercer than them. Of course, Su Qing can also write articles. The leaves of the sycamore have changed for many generations, and Su Qing under the leaves has also changed her clothes. This city can support it until now. The lights are turned on and the streets are full of people, all thanks to Su Qing's spirit. This street is catching up with the advanced modernity, and it has covered 100 years of road in 10 years, and it is also thanks to Su Qing's determination. If you look at the articles at the end of the newspaper, Su Qing and her opponents are back again, but they are a little fragmented, as if they have not had time to gather their scattered spirits. Find a Su Qing, but a large number of them come. They have been silent for decades, and now they are fierce again. Everyone is talking about the prosperous old dream of Shanghai. Do you know who the person in the dream is? If I say it is Su Qing, you will not believe it because she is not beautiful enough. If I say the core of the old dream of Shanghai is solid, I am afraid you will not believe it. Once things are about to become dreams, they can't help but become light. But Su Qing has no room for aftertaste. It is better to be Zhang Ailing than Su Qing, because Zhang Ailing is illusory, while Su Qing is real. After thinking it through, I feel that Su Qing can wear the women's people's dress. Didn't Mr. Jin Xingyao say that the most beautiful women at that time were all the same? You should know that this was a popular women's fashion in the 1950s. Why didn't Su Qing wear it? This is where Su Qing is neat. If it was Zhang Ailing, it would be a big trouble. In fact, what is the difference between Zhang Sam and people's dress? Underneath, the core is still the same. With food and clothing, dip in the snow and cut it into small pieces. With the stems and leaves on the ground, simmer the rice porridge over a low fire, like refining an elixir from morning to night. The rice grains are scattered in shape but not in spirit. The newly harvested spring bamboo shoots are cooked with oil, sauce and salt, and are very delicious with rice. Although this ordinary mind has no philosophical background, it is based on life experience and can be regarded as tempered by thousands of trials. Zhang Ailing can also appreciate the details of life, but that is a life-saving straw to lead her out of the void and keep her. Su Qing does not have such a huge sense of emptiness. At most it is disappointment. Her disappointment is related to specific people and things, and there is a fault to be found, unlike Zhang Ailing who is at a loss and has nowhere to scratch. Su Qing can use these details of life as a raft to carry her through the sea of suffering. In the darkest days of this city, the tightly closed three-story attic window still wafts a hint of the aroma of a small pot of coffee, which is Su Qing's raft. The city's high spirits are high here. It's not about being too ambitious, but about not letting go of what can be grasped, and every bit counts. You can say it's a struggle, but it's not about fighting to the death. It's about doing what it can. Of course, there are hyperactive and decadent people, but I'm talking about the backbone. The largest group of people are all pragmatic and not idealistic. Qing is one of them, and can be considered an elite. In that shaky island of Shanghai, she only sees life as a practical matter and a necessary task. Since it cannot be avoided, she must take responsibility, and many of the subsequent shaky and uncertain times are all based on this. It's more practical to not talk about being responsible to God or the people, but only to be responsible to oneself. To be a citizen in this city, you need to have some martyr spirit. It's not about being broad-minded, but about being determined. Otherwise, you can't withstand the test of changes. Qing persisted to the end. As a writer, she retired from the literary world in obscurity, without even a curtain call ceremony. But as a citizen, she did not fail in her duty and did not retreat halfway. Her obscurity was actually expected. With the evolution of the times, the old ended and the new came on stage. The legendary Shanghai staged this replacement even more violently. How many of the sounds and colors of the past died down and vanished into thin air? What's wrong with the Qing? Didn't she say long ago that in other people's times, she could only live under someone else's roof? I think that even if Qing wore a people's dress, the people's dress was well-tailored and ironed, with good quality trousers underneath. When the woolen trousers were worn out, Qing would have been old, so she had to make do with it. It's not a sudden enlightenment, but there is no other way. If there is no other way, there is no other way. You have to complain a few words and sigh about the bitter experience, but that's all.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.